Well, I mean, we just have to think of an intro.
Like one where we introduce Sean?
Yeah, just pretty much like when we have Sean on board. Sean, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sean.
Yeah, that was a great intro. Anyway,
Awesome.
on to the podcast.
Perfect.
Hit it like a gang initiation.
Whoa.
Hit it till they stop.
You didn't tell him about the
Breathing.
being initiated into the podcast, right?
Not yet.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
You're going to have to get naked.
And tonight, live from Colorado Springs, we have the Drop Culture Podcast with Timmy, Donnie, Mikey, and some other guy that's not here at the moment, and your special guest, which he won't tell you your name because of copyright reasons. So, other than that, let's begin the podcast.
Whose phone was ringing?
I don't know.
Theater mode. Okay, I'm guilty as charged. Send me to Gulag.
Well, you got our names wrong, but I mean, besides that, it was great.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
We'll
man.
pay you after the podcast. We promise.
Yeah, I want money now.
So
You told me.
we told you after the podcast.
No. You told me half up front, half after the podcast.
I already
haven't
gave you
got my
half.
money yet.
I already gave you half. I gave it to your assistant.
I don't have assistant.
Whoops.
Oh, well, that sucks for you because
No,
somebody
sucks,
has your money.
Sucks for you, big boy.
Somebody
I will
has
make you
your
pay for
money.
indiscretions.
All right. Well, we're recording now, so I'll just pay you after.
I'm going to pay you after
Okay, well, I mean, like, I'm good for it. We've known each other for what, 2 days?
2 hours.
Splitting hairs. Come on.
Pretty much.
We'll pay you. Look, all right, guys, we'll pay you. Right?
I'm not paying shit, dude. I don't know what you're talking
Guys,
about.
come on right now. We're going to ditch him afterwards. Just go with it.
I know where you work. I know what you drive.
He's wearing the same headphones like we are, dude. He can hear everything you're saying.
everything
Why didn't you guys tell me that before I said that?
because you're an idiot.
Fuck.
Okay, what are we talking about? This is. I'm bringing it back.
What the fuck is going on?
I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing it
kind of
back.
just go to these sidelines. And I'm just kind of like, squirrel. Kind of
Yes. No. That's our podcast.
I'm at home.
It's the Squirrel Podcast.
We almost called it We Digress.
We digress, yeah,
Digress.
but somebody already took it. Digress an asshole.
Well, we appreciate you guys listening in on this.
What the hell is going on in the world?
Can your phone just be quiet for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
All right.
I was like, holy shit.
It hasn't gone off for the whole hour we've been talking to him before
Yeah, I
this.
know. Believe me.
It's like a fucking zombie
you think
invasion happening. Like they broke in on our phones and computers and shit. And it's like martial law state in
I am now
effect.
showing my phone to everybody here. Look. Ooh.
Oh.
Ah.
How does that prove it's on silent?
Because just like I'm trusting you with the money,
Put it on the table.
All right, I
Put it on the
trust you.
table.
I trust you. We're going to pay you. Don't worry.
it's on the table.
Is Bixby home?
We appreciate you guys tuning in, though. This is our Halloween extravaganza.
Halloween.
Spooky ooky.
Oh.
It's real spooky down here.
Very
guys.
lackluster, but
It's pretty spooky.
We're werewolves, not swearwolves.
Ooh,
Swearwolves.
I like swearwolves. Well, tonight's podcast is going to be how the presentation of vampires in modern culture had a major divergence, starting with the Lost Boys and Near Dark in 1984, from the earlier progressions of the neoclassic, classic, and post-classic vampire into a whole new genre and ability to present sexuality way above Count Dracula. Way
Sure.
above.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm with it.
Okay.
Now, you start out with something like Shelley Denny, 1812, Lord Byron,
Right.
Frankenstein. The seeds of what people already perceived vampires to be was mixed with the undead, reanimating of the living.
What was actually when they were writing Frankenstein, when Shelley was writing Frankenstein with Byron at the house or whatever,
castle,
whatever they were doing, his physician was actually working on what was now considered like part of the modern day vampire, like the groundwork. I forget what that's called. But.
Consolidating all the myths and the mythos into something more tangible, presentable in the manner of the day.
Right.
Then you had like Varney the Vampire in the 1850s and 60s, adding to it. Then you get Bram Stoker's, who was thinking, wow, we got all this stuff. Originally, Bram Stoker was looking at placing Dracula in Austria.
Right.
Until he heard about Vlad Tepes Dracul in Romania and was like, oh, wow, wait a minute. You got to stake people, stake vampires in the heart. This guy impaled 20,000 Turks.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, connect the dots.
And obviously,
such a deal.
Such a deal.
And he was a pretty polarizing character, Vlad.
Yeah.
In and of himself.
Absolutely.
Like he would eat dinner amongst the piked dead.
Watch him being chopped up in front of his table.
Well,
Kinda
it was
like,
all the Ottomans. They hated the Ottomans because it killed they killed his father.
Well, they killed his father. He spent his childhood as a captive with the Ottoman Turks in Turkey. He was beaten. He was probably raped. So it's like no love lost there. And then defending the church, and mind you, Greek Orthodox or the Eastern Orthodoxy. And they're an interesting bunch of people.
Right.
Got nothing against them. I get it. I'm jiggy. Not my cup of blood, but hey, that's okay. And then you get Dracula. But the modern version. You get the book in 1897. People love it. People are just wonderful. And then comes Frederick Murnau. What does he do? He blatantly steals all sorts of stuff from the Dracula book, gets Max Schrenk to be the ugliest Nosferatu you can find. Pure scariness. There were a couple other films before that, but they have absolutely no comparison.
Well, they were based more off like Camilla, stuff like that. So it wasn't necessarily based off of Dracula. But
I mean, do you guys know
a lot
any
more
of...
lesbian overtones really with those stories?
From the Victorian era, you have girls being friends with each other. You have latent lesbianism that's kind of repressed but is always there.
Right.
What I researched too, like they did have the very first one belonged to an 1896 short film called The House of the Devil. It was a French silent film. And I'm going to mispronounce his name. Georges Méliès.
Malaise, yeah.
Okay.
The moon guy.
Yeah, and it was a vampiric Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles. Okay, and he turned from a bat to a devil. And then in 1913 there was The Vampire, an American silent film.
What was
based on a
before that what was the vampire poem that Rudyard Kipling wrote?
That's what the vampire was about. Loosely based on that.
Is
right
that
there.
the origin of vampires? Like that's the earliest of like when?
No.
Oh no, vampires have been around for thousands of
Since
years.
like Mesopotamia.
Mesopotamia. Yeah. You find them all around the world in all different cultures.
Oh yeah.
And then the word vampire's original roots come from a Eastern European word upir.
Right.
Oh.
And that's how how language changes. It became vampire in the English lexicon.
Wow.
So you go back, I don't know how many hundreds of years where the word is first used. Vampire mythos, evil, undead, animated to suck souls, blood, eat children, kill without any kind of remorse.
Wow.
To live.
Well,
I mean, it's the idea of immortality.
Right.
It's like, ooh, I don't need Jesus.
I need more souls.
I got the devil and vampirism. Score!
Yeah.
Like I say, sleep all day, party all night. It's fun to be a vampire.
See, well, I mean, 1922 is when Nosferatu came out.
Mm-hmm.
So again, one of the most popular vampire movies still to this day. It's such a striking everything with the way they play with the shadows, the cinematography of the movie. They built up that entire cinematic mythos of Dracula in that. Even though it really wasn't, it was Count Orlok, right?
Right.
Count Orlok.
So it wasn't even a real Dracula.
But it was so
couldn't.
Well, it was such a ripoff that actually the estate and his widow, Bram Stoker's widow, sued them and made them destroy every copy but 5.
But 5?
Yeah. Those 5, like, I don't remember, I think it was in the 90s or early 2000s where they put them all back together.
Yeah.
And made like one solid, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like a copy.
They've been
Kind of
going
like
back
Horror
on
of Dracula.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when they had all the copies go to hell in a handbag.
Yep.
Yep. Oh no, Metropolis.
Metropolis. That's
But
what
they
you
found the one in Chile that they
Yeah.
did. And it was like a 3-hour version.
Yeah,
I've
you're
sat
right.
through it a couple of times, but I mean, it's just so
You right.
immense and
You
long.
right.
Because they in the 80s they did the Metropolis to where it was like done to heavy metal music too.
Oh, yeah.
didn't they? So it's kind of weird. Anyway, after that they had Todd Browning did London After Midnight, and that was Lon Chaney.
Yeah.
So Lon Chaney's first jump into that kind of crazy. I mean,
wasn't he doing the Notre Dame character
Hunchback
in 1925?
Yeah, there was a silent Frankenstein movie that they just unearthed. So that whole horror kind of in cinema had just been starting in the 20s and the late 20s.
Well, the whole cinema in general, taking all sorts of stuff and trying to do it in an original fashion.
And when you're scaring somebody, like, of course, Nosferatu was doing, then London After Midnight, I mean, Lon Chaney was a man of 1,000 faces. Mm-hmm. So he could do anything. So he could have technically done that right there. But then we get to the biggest change. Because at this time, too, Lugosi was doing Dracula on stage
right.
the entire time. So he was the Hungarian guy that was on stage, that had the voice, and he was doing basically what he did in the 31 movie with that.
Absolutely.
And that started the Universal Monsters, because that movie was so fucking good.
Oh, it was fantastic.
To start off with, what was it, Swan Lake? They started off with the music at the very beginning of it, and they got into Van Helsing. They got into everything that we know today, but they didn't take it from Bram Stoker's in a way that they had the linear style or the unlinear style of the letters and everything like that from the book. They actually made it to where it was like it was really happening. So people weren't really writing back home and stuff like that. Jonathan Harker wasn't, things like that.
Because they took that off the stage play that he was doing, which was a truncated version of the book, because you didn't have the ability to present stuff like the letters and all that.
Yeah.
You had to present it in a presentation in a linear fashion.
And in 31, that was still the very beginning of the talking films. Anyway, so
that was the first talkie of a horror talkie, I understand.
Yeah, and at the same time, though, did you ever watch the Spanish version of Dracula?
I want to see that. That I heard was even better than Lugosi's.
Correct. It is supposed to be. Like, I haven't ever watched it because I don't speak Spanish. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to watch subtitles. But I went to the theater and I actually saw Dracula, and they had a double feature. If I wasn't there with my wife and kid, I probably would have stuck around to see it, because they filmed it on the same sets. They filmed it at night. After the production was done, they filmed the Spanish version, and they had their and again
Perfect.
the production
A vampire movie being filmed at night.
Correct, with all the same elements, the same sets, the same costumes, the same everything, but it was all in Spanish, which was crazy. That was
Solamente en
that's kind
español.
of unheard of, because they didn't do that with any other of the Universal movies either.
No.
That was the only one, and they just now really started kind of pushing that one out. So that's another, I think, really notable movie in that Universal aspect of it.
Absolutely.
But it's just one of those that people haven't really seen that much of.
Well, it was never presented a whole lot because it was always Anglo-centric.
Yeah, exactly.
And so even though you had for lack of a better term, a Spanish-speaking population, too bad, so sad. We'll make something for you. Oh, here are the scraps.
Yeah.
But then the scraps are better than the main dish.
So they kind of push it off. But
Realistically,
I
I think it would be better to be a vampire in Mexico than in anywhere in Eastern Europe.
I'll agree with that one.
A lot of people in a small space. They're all half naked.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be real easy to eat, brother.
Absolutely.
Real easy to eat.
Oh my
And
god!
they love to show boobs. They love boobs.
Hey,
We love boobs.
vampire or not, I like boobs.
hey,
Well,
who doesn't?
Exactly.
I think that one was, like we were talking a couple weeks ago. Basically, the turning point of these things. There's milestones in the in those films, and I think you have Nosferatu is number one. Number two would be Dracula. Would be the Lugosi Dracula right there.
Well, you have Lugosi, then you have
Christopher
Mark
Lee.
of the Vampire. You have Lon Chaney Jr. in the 40s with the knockoffs. But there's a common theme. Well-dressed gentleman, dashingly handsome, big cape. And, of course, he goes anywhere, and nobody bats an eye. This is no longer Victorian London. We're talking the Blitz in World War II.
Right.
And a guy comes out of a coffin with a tuxedo with nowhere to go. Think about that.
Yeah.
And then you have Christopher Lee.
Yes.
You have Hammer with I think it was it was it Universal? It was Universal in the beginning, and then went to Warner Brothers, wasn't it?
Correct. I think you are correct. And then Hammer made what was from 66 to like 70 something. They made a bunch of movies.
They started
Bunch
in
of movies
58.
with Warner Brothers.
What?
Dracula started in 58.
Was it 58?
Yeah,
58.
yeah.
The original horror Dracula.
Yes.
But now you've got a whole different version. Still the cape, still the English morning coat, but now you have not just implied sexuality.
Overt.
You have way over. You have boobs. You have